again about variables, control flow, and looping. Variables. Okay, variables are just, it's a way to store these information. At the end of the day, like an application or like engineering is just saving these data and then manipulating, interacting with the data. So variables is just a way to store these data. So let's say, for instance, we are trying to create an app like Twitter. This is Twitter because I say so. I have this, I don't know, account. I don't know how it looks like on the web, but if someone posts a photo and there's this empty part and here's like comments. If I say, hey, I'm going to click, if I want to create, let's say there's no such thing as Twitter and I'm the first person to create it. If I say, hey, I want to click this heart, I want, when the user clicks this heart, make it pink. That already is a data. So data in this case, so like the variable in this case would be like button, right? You just store this. Note that this syntax is not right, but I just wanted to write it in English, so it kind of makes sense. So let's say the button dot is clicked, right? Then I want to change the button dot to pink, something like that. So that's just it. So you are saving this variable button that we can use wherever in our code base. And then when we do something to this button, let's say it's clicked, then we want to change the color to pink or something like that. So that's, at the end of the day, just data, interact with it, change the value, and then show it on the screen. That's it. Cool. Control flow. I kind of explained control flow here. So control flow enables us to run functionality based on certain conditions. So in this case, the certain condition would be only when the button is clicked, right? I want to change the color, not like every 10 minutes or not when someone refreshes the page, but only when the button is clicked. So that is a condition. So it will look like if this happens, then do whatever. We're going to look into that later. Looping is something similar, giving a condition, but it's a repeated behavior. So it's a repeated behavior. So let's say 4 or 5 times I want to click something. I don't know. Yeah, so just making whatever the behavior repeat for a certain amount of time. And there are some ways to do looping, so we're going to look into those as well. Cool. JavaScript is the tool that we use to write instructions to tell our web browsers what to do. There are 3 languages that the web browser can understand. Gina, do you have any idea what the 3 languages could be?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, so the web browser like Chrome, Firefox, or Internet Explorer can understand 3 languages. What do you think the 3 languages could be based on the slideshow?
So it's not these 3, hypertext, CSS, and JavaScript?
It is these 3. Oh. Yes, thank you.
That's why I was like, wait a minute, is it something else? Because I see those on the screen.
Okay. I know. Yeah, it's hypertext markup language, CSS, cascading, style sheet, CSS, and JavaScript. Thank you, Gina. I'm sorry for putting you on the first question. Yeah. So HTML is just the skeleton. I like to use this metaphor, like the human body is a skeleton, is a structure. So in this case, on the web browser here, or Codesmith web browser, HTML is what puts button here. Or let me close up. Yeah, what puts button here and what puts like input source here. It doesn't know what color it's gonna look like. It doesn't know where it's gonna locate it, but it knows that it is a button at the end of the day. Yeah, so that's the skeleton. but it's not going to be so pretty if you're walking around as a skeleton, right? It's going to be creepy. So that's why we have CSS. It's like, think of it as your skin, flesh. So it makes it prettier. That's why the button here is like the Codesmith mint blue, and the navy, the Codesmith navy blue, or something like that. And also the fonts, things like that, all in CSS. So now it's pretty. JavaScript, what we're going to learn today is the muscle. It lets you do stuff. It lets you interact with the data, again, the variables that we saved. It lets us interact with it and do something with it. So yeah, that's what we're going to learn. We have workshops on HTML, CSS. I don't want to say it's easy, but relatively easy compared to JavaScript. JavaScript is a hard one. That's why we have so many workshops and do so many prep courses on JavaScript. Cool. So JavaScript. What happens when you run JavaScript? So I don't know if you guys ever saw like these code editors like REPL, or I don't know, even our CSX. When you write something and then click the run button, it runs. So what happens when you click that run is just the engine goes through the code line by line. This is very important. It goes line by line. And then saves the information, the data. And then we write using special declaration keyword. So again, engineering, software engineering, like programming, is just saving these data, doing something with it, right? So how do we then save these data? Variables, right? There are ways to save, like let JavaScript know that, hey, this is a variable that we're going to save, and that's the keyword. So these are the keywords: var, let, const. These are the three keywords that JavaScript understands when it saves the variables. So does anyone know the difference between like var, let, and const? If not, I can. Oh, actually, I saw a hand up. Yes, Charlie.
When we declare variables with the keyword var, it's a variable that we intend, or that we can expect the value to change or be updated in some way later on in the code. When we declare using let, it's a similar circumstance. It can change. I was watching a tutorial about there is an error that will be thrown with var as opposed to let under certain circumstances. But const is basically a constant and is typically it's meant to be an unchanging, or the value of it is constant. It's not changing. Cool. So we can expect later down in the code that the initialized will remain constant.
Cool. Awesome, Charlie. Thank you. Yeah, you're mostly right. No, actually, you're right. So just to go over the explanations, var and let and const. So there's a difference between var and let and const. So var, there's a JavaScript has versions, because at the end of the day, it's just a language that software engineers come and they wrote. So var is from ES5, which means ECMAScript version 5. So it's just version 5. And then from version 5 to 6, they created these two other keywords, which are let and const. Yeah, so as Charlie explained, var and let, you can reassign. So this will be the technical communication term that you want to remember, reassign. Reassign the values of the variables. However, const is a constant, so you cannot reassign the value. The difference between var and let could be a bit more, it will be covered in CS prep. So it's about block scope. So there's like a strict scope for let. Let me just try to explain it in an easier sense. And var didn't really think about that when they were creating this language. So just know that var is ES5, let is ES6. So using let is recommended because currently we're on like ES10 or something. So it's super outdated to use var. Yeah, so that's what we have here. Yeah, so here var num here is the label here, label. And this is a value. Yeah, so we set a label. So think of it as like if you have a drawer, it's the handle. So when you grab that and pull it, you're gonna get all these values. Makes sense, right? Yeah, so that way, let's say we save name as a string Codesmith. Later on, if you want to use Codesmith, instead of typing Codesmith every single time, you can just grab name. Yeah, so that's the label values there. And yeah, you can save anything, as you can see. For values, this is a number, this is a string. Here we have an object with these key value pairs inside. We're saving that in one variable. We have arrays saved as the value. Even the array itself has number, strings, another array, and an object. Super complex. And then after that, you have a variable with Boolean. Boolean is like true, false, things like that. Cool. So we are actually going to whiteboard that. Let me change this to. Oh, no. Nope. Cool. So I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with the Codesmith diagramming, process. I will start, not the whole thing, but I will start like creating the execution context and so on. So, but after this, I'm going to ask everyone. Cool. So yeah, so when you run a JavaScript code, an execution context opens up. And in this execution context, we have two things. One is the thread of execution. And this is the global memory. Cool. So think of the global memory as our brain. When you see something, you're going to store it in your brain, right? So that's what JavaScript does. I'll just go through this. So here, again, JavaScript, what was the, Miranda, what was the order that JavaScript executes when it hits the run?
So I think it's going to go from the top down, so the first line.
Yep, just literally line by line. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so it's going to go line by line. It will first see the keyword var. So it's going to be like, oh, okay, I guess it's a variable. In the global memory, it's going to store the label num and assign the value to 3. And the next thing, it sees a let keyword. So it's going to store the label name and then assign it to a string Codesmith. The next thing, it sees a const. So it's a constant, still saving in the global memory. So the label is store of info, and then it's going to assign it as an object with name, key, and Codesmith value. By the way, this has to be capital C. It's going to save everything. And then it's home, an array with New York City and Los Angeles. And then close. And then close that object. Cool. Then again, const. So it's going to save this label random list, and then set its value to the array 1, string 2, array 3, and object 4 with undefined. So we have one more line. Kai, what will JavaScript do?
Well, it will assign true to intro to JavaScript is awesome.
And where is it going to save it to?
The global memory.
Awesome, thank you. Yep, intro to JavaScript is awesome. Set it equal to true. And I saw in the chat if JavaScript is has anything to do with Java. No, it's a two totally different language. But the reason why it says JavaScript is because when JavaScript launched, Java was very the most popular language. So they wanted to kind of piggyback on that fame. It's a marketing failure. So JavaScript is a dynamic language, and Java is statically typed, meaning, let's say for JavaScript, here, as you can see, when you're declaring this variable, you can just say label num and then set it to a number. It's not gonna yell at me saying, hey, you didn't let me know what you're gonna put in. But Java does that. So when you are declaring a variable in Java, not only you have the label, you have to tell what type it is. So you have to be like, hey, I'm going to save this thing called num, and the type is number. It's an integer, something like that. So that is pretty different. So it takes longer to code Java. However, when you actually run it and then see an error, for Java, it's going to throw an error immediately before going through the whole thing. So you know where to fix, because it's going to be like, hey, you said this function is going to return number, but in fact it's returned a string. Like there's something wrong, which is super picky. But because of that, there's less chance for actually getting the error after you create the whole thing. Whereas JavaScript, it's just going to be like, oh, I don't care, whatever you store. And then later on, you're going to see a bug or an error, but you'll have no idea where to go to. So you as an engineer will have to go in and debug everything. So yeah. So there's another language called TypeScript, which kind of adds that statically typed feature of Java to JavaScript. So you can use JavaScript and then you would have to add all these types and so on. Yep, so that's JavaScript and Java. Hope it helped your question. Cool. And here. Okay, so we're gonna jump right into the control flow. So that was variables, that was it. Now you can all save variables now. You can store data. Yeah, this is control flow. Again, control flow is executing whatever that we want to do based on the condition. So if the condition matches, then I'm going to do whatever I said I'm going to do. In the example on the right side, we call this the if-else statement. If the something would be whatever is inside the parentheses. So here, if my grades is less than or equal to 70, then that is the only time, when this condition meets, that is the only time we're going to look at these between these curly brackets. Same thing. So currently my grade says 75, so it's not less than or equal to 70, right? So it's going to skip this because it does not meet the condition, and then move to this else if block. So here, if my grade is less than 80, which is true, so we are going to execute this. Because we executed the else if block, even though, let's say, the next else block matches the condition, it's just going to skip. It only goes line by line again. So when it meets the condition, it's going to execute it, and then it's going to leave that whole control flow. Yeah, and then here, if, and later on, it's going to, this is a new if else block, right? So that we're going to go into because it's a line by line. JavaScript runs line by line. Yeah, so again, we can use multiple if statements on the same data. This is what this means, 1, 2. Yeah, and then you can chain the control flow with if, else if, forever. Which won't be the best practice, but yeah, you can do that. Yeah, and we do not need the else condition if we do not have a default case, meaning yeah, we have if, else if, right? And anything that does not fit into these two conditions will fall into this. That's why we call it the default case. But if you don't need to do anything with the default cases, then you don't even need this else block. It's not going to throw you an error. It's just like, oh, it didn't fit any of the if else statements, so it's not going to do anything. That's it. Cool. So let's diagram this out again. Okay. So, Chelsea, what opens up when we run the JavaScript code?
Sorry, could you ask the question again?
Yep. What opens up when we run this JavaScript code?
Would it be the global console log? What is it called?
Yeah, so it's an execution context. And inside the execution context, we have the global memory and thread of execution. Cool, thank you. Yep, so this is the global memory. Yeah, I'm lazy now. This is the thread of execution. Cool. So let's see. Ingrid, what's the first thing JavaScript's gonna do?
The first thing is declaring a constant and the label's migrate, and the assigned value is number 75. So
awesome. That is great technical communication, by the way. Awesome. Yes. What were you saying?
And so in the global memory, we're going to jot down the migrate 75.
Yep. Cool. Yes. Awesome. Thank you. And then let me actually draw a console real quick. Console. Here. Cool. Next would be Karen. Cool. Yeah, so what is the next step that JavaScript's gonna take?
So we are going to use the if-else statement. So if migrate is less than 70 or equals 70,
does it meet the condition?
Yes, console log.
Wait, what is the value of migrate right now?
Oh, migrate is the value is 70.
Ooh, so when you don't know the value of it, look at the global memory. That's what JavaScript's gonna do. So when it sees migrate, as soon as it sees this variable, because JavaScript doesn't know what migrate is, it's going to say, oh, it's a label. So what's the value inside the global memory right now with that label?
75?
Yep. So currently migrate is 75 because we declared the variable right here. Yeah, so is 75 less than or equal to 70?
No.
Nope, exactly. So this condition does not meet, right? Cool, so does it meet the next condition? Else if block?
Else if migrate, which is 75, is less than 80, then we will get the message is passing.
Yeah, yes, so again,
I don't know how to read it, honestly. I don't have the technical right.
We're here to learn it, right? So yeah, we're going to log it on the console. So I drew a mini console here. So console log is a method that you can show, like print out whatever you wrote to the console. Here is migrate. What was the value of migrate again?
Migrate is 75.
75, and then plus is just going to add the string on the right side. So it's going to print out 75, and then what does it say on the right side?
Is passing.
Cool. It's going to print out 75 passing. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so the next thing, it will not hit the next else block, right? Because we already met this condition, so we're going to exit out from this bigger if else statement. Cool. Linda, what is the next step?
Next step is to go to the next control flow. And it's going to say, it's gonna assess if my grade is equal to 100, and that condition is not met.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool.
that,
Awesome.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
gonna, okay.
that's it. Doing nothing. Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Samina, I have a question for you. Cool. So wait, can you unmute or? Okay, I can move on to Vivian. Okay, Vivian. What will happen if we reassign my grades to 100?
So if we to reassign it to 100, then it would go back to the first condition. If my grade is less than or equal to 70.
So let me clarify the question. So if I say if I start here, like I declare this variable and then here I'm going to reassign it to 100.
Yeah.
What will happen?
So then,
It's a trick question.
Okay. We would go to global memory and it would, no?
So how are we declaring the variable? What's the keyword for my grades right now?
100.
The keyword.
My grade.
That's the label. So const var let, what is it? What are we using?
A constant.
Yep, it's a constant. Can we reassign a constant?
Oh, no, we can't. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a trick
So
question. I'm sorry, Vivian.
yeah, it was. So it would be ignored. It can't change it.
Yeah, it's just gonna throw an error. Hey, you're trying to reassign to a constant. Awesome.
Okay.
Now you know. Now we all
Yeah.
know that for constant you can't reassign. Cool. Yeah, that was it.
That was
But
tricky.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's say it was let, then we can reassign it, right? So that means on the next line, we're going to reassign this to 100. So it will go through, it will actually ignore this because it's not less than 70, ignore this, not less than 80. So it's going to be else. So it's going to print out 100 is excellent. And then because it is 100, it's going to hit this second if block and then console log a perfect grade. Cool. That one keyword just changed everything. Cool. Yeah, so let's move on to the next slide or next concept, the looping. Okay, so we store data to retrieve it later and run it. For loop or like the looping, we can do the same thing over and over again for however long that we want. The syntax of for loop is very important because it runs in a specific order, which could be kind of hard for anyone. Like I even had some engineer who is actually working as an engineer got confused on how for loop works. So you guys are already in a better position. Huh. Okay, so this is the syntax of for loop. For, and then here we add in the conditions. In the conditions, this is called initialization. So you are initializing the variable I, and then here's the condition, the actual condition. Oh my God. So if I is less than my grade dot length, dot length is a method that you can use that is given in JavaScript. So if the variable is an array, you can check the length of it. Yes, and length literally is just how many elements that you have in an array. So in this case, my grade, since it has 50, 75, 90, is going to be 3. And then so first thing you initialize it. Second, you check the condition. Third step is not the I incrementation. Third step is going to be do whatever is inside that curly bracket. So do whatever I have to do inside the for loop. And then after I did that, then it's going to go here and then increment I. That is very important. Yes, it's going to be very confusing once I start to call out everyone when we start diagramming, but yeah, that's the order. Yeah, just to go over briefly before we actually diagram it out, it's going to first store this constant migrates, and then store the variable sum, and then set it to assign its value to 0. And then inside the for loop, it's going to initialize I, so you can use the variable I within the for loop. And then you check the condition if I, curly is 0, is less than migrate.length, which I said it was 3 because there are 3 elements. Yeah, and then do whatever sum, and then you're reassigning the value of sum to sum plus migrates index I. And then you add that up, and then after you reassign the sum, it increments I. So I plus plus means I not equal to I plus 1. You're reassigning the value of I here. So it's going to now become 1. And then it's going to, with I being 1, it's going to check the condition. Is I 1 less than migrate.length, which is 3? Yes. So then it's going to go into the block. Do the same thing over and over again until we do not meet the condition. If the condition fails, let's say I is 3 and the length is 3. 3 is not less than 3. 3 is equal to 3, right? So it's going to pop out of the for loop and then move on to the next step. Cool. Yeah, and let me actually just erase this part. Yeah, and then let's see if there's anything we have to, oh yeah, and then this bracket notation here. Use a different color here. So index in arrays starts from 0. Index is just like the location. This is 0th index, first index, second index. Note that the last index is 1 less than the migrate.length because it starts from 0. Okay, so migrates. So when you want to grab the element 50, it will be my grades, bracket notation, index 0. So this will point to 50. If I try to console log that, it's going to show me number 50. If I change this from 0 to 1, it's going to give me 75, and so on. So yeah, let's go in and start diagramming. Alma, what happens when you run JavaScript code? What opens up?
The execution context.
Yep, and context. Sorry, I'm lazy. What are the 2 things that are inside the execution context?
The thread of execution and the global memory.
Awesome, thank you. Next will be Angela. What is the next thing that, or the first thing JavaScript's gonna do? Oh yeah, I think I remember Angela did not have a microphone. Sorry, I'll move to Brandy.
The second thing is we're going to declare the variable, or like write the variable in the global execution.
You actually had the right technical communication. You declared a variable.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you're going to use
you're good.
the keyword const to declare a variable, my grades, and then assign it an array with the numbers 50, 70, and 90.
75, right?
I mean, sorry, 50, 75, and 90.
Good. Yep. Yeah, and you can also say you can declare a constant instead of saying like a constant variable. Declare a constant. Great technical communication. And actually, can you do the next line as well?
Yes. So then we're going to declare a. You said declare. So
for this, you can just say declare a variable. When you use the const keyword, you're declaring a constant.
Okay. So do I need to say use the keyword let and declare a variable called sum?
No, you can just say declare a variable sum.
Okay.
And assign the value to 0.
Declare a variable sum and assign it to 0.
Awesome. Thank you. And next would be Carolina. Carolyn? I'm sorry, I think it's connected to your last name. Can you unmute, or I can move on to Charlie. Hi, Charlie.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
So we
yeah.
are we're at the for loop, which is our conditional phrase, or it's our we're setting up our for. It's not really. We're just setting up the loop for the array.
Yep.
Right. So we're going to for this let I, which is referring to the index, equals 0, and for as long as I is less than the length of the array stored at my grades as the which is the value of my grades, increment I by 1.
Before that, what was the step? 1, 2. Check the condition, and then.
You check the condition into, and as long as the condition is true, then you're going to do the stuff. You're going to execute the definition of the function, which is sum is going to equal the sum plus the index position, the value at the index position of my grades that you're currently on.
Cool. So does it currently meet the condition? I is currently 0.
Yes.
And then, so what is?
So since I is 0, we will pull the sub-zeros, the array, the value that's sort of the sub-zeroth position of the array, which is 50. And add it to sum, which is 0. And we will that will return to an update. It will update the value of sum to 50 to an array of 50. It's not an array. No, we're just adding and incrementing. So the value of sum will now be updated to reflect
to 50, right?
And so the local memory, it's going into the global memory.
Yep, correct. So again, we're going to grab the value of sum, or reassigning the value of sum to the sum, which is 0. We know that because it's in the global memory right now. It's 0. And then you add my grades index 0, which is 50, to 0. And then we reassign the value of sum with that value, so which is 50. So now this is 50. Awesome. And then what's the next step?
We're going to increment I by 1.
Yep, so I is now 1. Awesome, thank you. Next would be, let's go to Chelsea.
Sorry.
Okay. So
sorry,
now
so
A is 1.
So then will it run that last line at the bottom?
Yes, so
Let
let's go
average
from
equals-
I is 1. Does it meet the condition?
Yes.
Okay, so then what's the next step if it meets the condition?
I'm not sure. I'm not totally sure on this one.
Yeah, so this is what we're going to do. The do part is here, right? We're reassigning the value of sum. So what is the current value of sum right now?
It is 1.
Sum.
Oh, sorry, 0.
We just reassigned it to 50, as you can see in the global memory, right?
Okay, got it.
So what's the value?
51.
It is 50, right?
50 plus, yeah.
And then we're going to add, so currently the sum is 50, and we're going to reassign its value to whatever the value is of sum, which is 50. And then we are going to add my grades index 1. I here is here. So this basically just means my grades array. And then we're going to grab the index 1. So when you look at my grades array, what is the first index? And index starts from 0. And when you don't know where the array is, look at the global memory, because that's what JavaScript's going to do, basically. This is the 0th index, first index, second index. What's the first index?
75.
Yep, 75. Awesome. Cool. So here, this value is going to be 75. And then we are going to add 50 and 75, which is 125. I wish that's right. And then we're going to reassign the value of sum, which is in the global memory. Cool. So 1, 2, 5. Cool. And then we're going to increment I to 2. Cool. Awesome. Next would be Gina.
Hi.
Hello.
So next we're gonna now grab the second.
Ooh, even before that, what is the value of I right now?
The value of I is going to now be 2.
Does it meet the condition?
Yes.
Now, as you were saying.
So the index of 2 in the array of my grades is 90. So we're going to go down to sum, and we're going to add 90 to 125, which is the reassigned value of sum. And
is it 215?
125, yeah.
I think, yeah, I think it's right. 215, yeah, okay. And then we reassigned it, and then what's the next step?
After we reassign it, then we're going to now add to the index position of 2, we're going to add +1, which would make the new I position of 3.
Can you actually do the next step as well? So currently I is 3. Does it meet the condition?
I is 3, which means the condition for the for loop is no longer met.
So exit out from for loop.
So we're going to exit out of the for loop and then enter into, we're going to declare a variable for let of average.
Oh my God.
And that is going to equal sum, which at this point is 215, as we see in the global memory. And we're going to divide it by the length of the my grades array, which is 3.
Oh my gosh, this is messy.
And
something, right? 0.3 something.
I was going to say, yeah, you'll have to tell me what that is.
Yeah, something like this, right? I don't know. This is a messy number. I should update that number. Anyways, yeah, that's correct. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and I just saw the chat asking if a for loop is in the local execution context. I'm assuming that you attended one of the function workshops. So when you invoke a function, which we're not going to cover today, it opens up a local execution context inside the thread of execution. And the way I drew the for loop, it looks like a local execution context because, as you can see, it had its own like local memory here, and then like it looks like it has a thread of execution here. Apparently, when you look at JavaScript documentation, for loop has its own execution context, similar to local execution context. So that's why later on, if you try to like console log I around here, like console.log I, variable I, you can't, because the I variable is only available within that for loop execution context. Yeah, so that's why I drew it like this. So it's not necessarily a local execution context, but for loop has its own execution context, if that helps, if that makes sense. Cool, so that was it. And the hell starts. Whew. There's a reason I say it's a hell. The for loop hell. Yeah, so, okay, so what if you want to see all the possible sums for each number in an array? That means I want to see like 50 plus 75, 50 plus 90, and then 75 plus 50, 75 plus 75, 75 plus 90, and then 90 plus 50, 90 plus 75, 90 plus 90. So there will be 3 possibilities, right? 3 times 3. I don't know why, but this person wanted to see that. And it's typically best practice to avoid nested loop. Avoid nested loop. And you will see why. You will be hating nesting loops after diagramming this nested for loop. You're gonna feel bad for JavaScript. Yeah, so to briefly explain, it's computationally heavy. The time complexity, which is the time that takes to go through the certain input, is pretty long. You'll see after diagramming. So it's best to avoid these nested loops. But there are some cases that we have to use it, and it could be pretty confusing. So it'll be a good practice to diagram this. Just to kind of visualize what it looks like right now. Here is the outer for loop. And then in the for loop, we're declaring initializing I, have the condition, we're going to do whatever, but inside that do whatever, we have another for loop block. So that's why it's going to be super confusing. So while we're doing something, we hold that there, open another for loop, and then declare a initialize a variable, check the condition, do whatever, and then increment that initialized variable, which is j in this case. If it meets the condition, do whatever until it does not meet. And then it's going to, after we do not meet the condition anymore, then we go to the outer for loop, because finally we're done with whatever we did in the outer for loop. Then we increment I. Same thing, check the condition, do whatever we have to do. But while we're doing it, open another for loop, finish that loop, come out, and then finally increment the outer for loop index. Already so confusing. It's gonna be super confusing, but we can do it. We can do it. Okay. I guess I cannot erase that. Let's see. Okay, Ingrid, what happens when I run this JavaScript code? What opens up?
Well, do you mean, are we going to first do the global execution context?
Context, yep, we open up the execution context, and then what's inside the execution context?
Inside of that is the global memory.
Mm-hmm. And then here's the
that is the thread of execution.
Awesome, thank you. I love how you're writing all these notes. It's really important. Cool. Yeah, so what's the first thing that JavaScript does?
The first thing is declaring variable constant.
Mm-hmm.
My nums.
Mm-hmm.
And the value is an array of 50, 75, and 90.
Mm-hmm. And then the next step will be?
And the next step will be declaring the variable for.
Or actually, it's a for loop. So it'll be a keyword, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Declaring keyword for loop.
Not declaring, you just you enter a for loop. Yeah.
Okay. Enter a for loop.
Mm-hmm.
And
what is the first thing that you do in this for loop?
In the first thing is we are going to is there a such, you just explained this, there's another local
yeah, so for loop, yeah, I would just say for loop has its own execution context. It's not like super important at this point, so I'll just say the first part here.
Okay, so we're going to the first step is to document the first for loop execution, which is I equal 0.
Yeah, so we are initializing I. And what is the condition?
The condition is I is less than the length of my nums, which is 3. And then the third step would be
we're going to do whatever is in the for loop, right?
I don't see the sum. I know this is a different problem, but because I know that that's not the third. That's
Oh no. So yeah. So the first step, you initialize the variable let. Second step, you just check this condition. Third step is whatever is inside. So
that's
what are we declaring here?
We are declaring variable constant, keyword num1.
That's the label. So keyword is like for, var, let, const, whatever JavaScript can understand. Num1 is whatever we wrote. We can, yeah, it's a variable. It's a label.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I'm still practicing the technical.
This is the perfect time to practice it. Yes.
Okay. And it is assigning value my nums.
Index.
In this case, it would be 0, the first one. So it would be the first number in the array, which would be 50. Value of 50.
Awesome. Yep, that'll be it. Thank you, Ingrid. Awesome. Next will be Ginny. So we just declared the variable or constant num1. What is the next step?
Then we go for the second for loop.
For loop? Yes, correct. Where the hell begins?
There's a condition J is 0 and
yes, so we are initializing J to 0.
And see if 0 is smaller than the length of my nums, which is 3. It is. So we go and
declare
num2 to the first number in the my num array, which is 50. Then we get print out the string sums, and then sums and 50 plus 50, which is 100.
Yep. So it's going to print out sum 50 plus 50, which is 100. Awesome. Great. And what's the next step?
Next step is add 1 to J. So J is 1.
Yep. Yeah. And okay, this is the funny thing. So thank you, Ingrid. Because the reason why for loop is different from other like local execution context is when we are done with whatever we're doing, this part, like whatever we saved here, disappears. So this is going to disappear. That's why even though it's a constant, we can rewrite the value on top of it. Does that make sense? It's not going to erase the j, which we initialize inside our condition, but it's going to erase whatever happened inside. So yes, so Ingrid, yes, back to you. Now j is 1. What's the next step? We check the condition, right?
That was someone else.
Oh, sorry, who was?
Okay.
Oh, it was Ginny, right?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Mhm. So, j is 1 and it's still smaller than the length of my nums. So, we make another num.
Yep. We declare a
Declare num
to
two.
constant, and then what's the value?
Constant, and the value is 75. The second one in the array,
and then
we print out the sum equals to
125, I think.
Plus 2, so yeah, 125.
Yep. And then what's the next step?
We go back and add one more to j, and j equals to 2. It's still smaller than 3.
Awesome, thank you. Finally, we can move on. Thank you, Ginny. Next would be, do I really have to buy this storage? Anyways, Kai.
Hi.
Yep, currently j is 2.
Okay. All right.
You can do it.
Okay, very nervous. Okay, j is 2. So then num2 now equals 75.
Sorry, even before that, doesn't meet the condition.
Oh wait, 2 greater, less than 3. Yes, it does meet the condition.
Cool. And then what are we declaring now then?
Num2 equals 75.
Why is it 75? What does the index start from?
The index starts from 50, or
yeah, so it's 0, right?
0, yeah. So then it's 90. 90. Sorry.
Yep. Awesome. No, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 90. This is so confusing. Like even when I'm doing like daily work, I'm like, why is it not working? Oh, anyways, yeah, it's 90. So what's the next step?
Then you go and you now assign the variable sum equals.
It's not variable, it's just a string.
Oh, it's
and
just,
you're just printing out on the console log.
It prints out sum equals 50 plus 90, which is 140.
140, yep. Cool. And then the next step?
The next step, now j would equal 3, which it would not meet the condition anymore.
Awesome. So that is when we are going to exit out from, okay, we're gonna exit out from this inner for loop because we're done. We're no longer meeting the next condition. What's the next step? This is the confusing part.
We now do something with I.
Yep, we're going to, because we are just done with whatever we have to do for the outer for loop. So we are going to increment I, right? Whew, yeah, so I finally won. Cool. Cool, that was one round. Now do you see why I hate nested looping? Yes. Please don't do it. Cool, awesome. Thank you, Kai. Okay, 2 more rounds to go. Karen, you're next. Okay, so I don't remember if you had a mic or not. Actually, if not, I'll move on to Kosh or Lara.
Hey.
Yep, cool. Hello, Lara. Yeah, so currently I is 1. What will be the next step?
So we're going to see if it meets the condition I is less than num's length. is. So we're going to declare a constant called num1, and we're going to assign that the value of 75.
Yep.
That's the index 1. And then we are going to enter the for loop again.
Yep. And then inside the for loop, what are we doing?
Okay, so we're going to assign a variable j with the value of 0, or like initialize it. Yeah, we're going to check and see if it meets the condition. 0 is less than my num's length, which is 3, so it does. We're going to declare a constant called num2 with the value of my num's at index 0, which is 50. And then we're gonna move over to the console, and we're going to print the string sum and 75 plus 50, so 125.
Yep.
And then we're incrementing j.
Cool. Can you actually finish this inner loop?
Okay, just like go through the whole. Cool.
Yep.
So j is now 1. So we're going to evaluate 1 is indeed less than 3. So we can carry on, and we're going to declare num2 with the value of 75. And we're going to console log that sum 75. Was that 150?
Yep, I think so. Don't trust me, but I think so.
Yeah, and then we're gonna increment j n to be 2. Going back to the beginning of the loop, 2 is less than 3. So we're gonna declare num2 with the and that's gonna have the value of 90. And then we're gonna console log sum that 90 plus 50, 140, I think.
165, is it?
Whatever. Oh my
yeah.
God.
We're learning computer science, not math. So, okay, cool.
Whoops. But yeah, and then we're going to increment j again. So j is 3. So when we evaluate j against my num's length, it no longer meets the condition. So we're we're exiting the for loop and are incrementing I. So
awesome. Thank you. Yep, that was a long one. Whew, one more round to go. Thanks, Lara. Next would be Linda.
Okay.
Awesome. Let's do this. We can do it. Last round.
So now that we've we've exited out the second for loop, we're back to the first one, and we're increasing the I to is it 3 now?
Actually, we just incremented, so we can start from I to 2.
Okay, we incremented to 2, and we're gonna check if it meets the condition. It's still less than 3, so we can continue and declare a constant num1 with the value of, looks like it's a value of 90. Okay, and then we go back into the second for loop.
Yep.
Okay, and and so our j is now I believe it's 3.
Ooh. So we open up a new for loop, so it starts from the top. So it starts from, what does it say here? J.
So we're gonna initialize j as 3.
0, right?
Or 0. Start over again.
Yeah.
Okay. And it makes the condition. So we're gonna move on and declare a constant num2 as 50.
Yes.
So we're gonna log on the console some I think it's
Oh, wait, it's 140, right?
Yes, 140.
Mm-hmm. And then?
And then after that, I think you would continue and initialize or increase j by 1.
Yep.
And that'll make it, yeah, okay.
Yep, can you actually finish the whole loop?
I can try, okay. And
You can do
then
it, you can do it. Mm-hmm.
now you check to see if it meets the condition, which it still does.
Mm-hmm.
Then you declare the constant num2, which is 75.
Yep.
When you console log, you should get the sum.
I think it's 165.
Then to continue next, we can increase j to 3.
What is j currently?
Currently, it's it's 1. Sorry.
Yep. So it increments to.
It increments to 2.
Awesome.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Very good.
Okay. And it still meets our condition, so we can continue and declare num2 as 90. Okay, we console log that, and we get our sum.
I think it's 180.
Next, we increment our j to 3 at this point. We no longer meet our condition at this point, and we would exit out of the second for loop and back to our first for loop.
What's the next step in the outer for loop?
In the outer for loop, we would increment the I to 3.
And then does it meet the condition?
It no longer meets the condition at this point.
So we exit out from this loop as well. Yay! We're done. Woo! Everyone clap. We're done. We did the nested for loop. So these 9 rounds of unnecessary work, honestly. Yeah, so this is how much computationally heavy the nested for loops are. This is literally what JavaScript does. One thing I noticed is that you guys are too smart and you try to memorize like what the current step is. You really don't have to do that when you're diagramming it out. All you have to do is like literally look at the global memory, because that's what JavaScript's gonna do. They're not smart like us. We can tell by, you know, Siri sometimes can be super stupid, you know? So that's the limitation of these languages for now. Our brain are a lot smarter. So it's not going to be like tracking what round, or like it doesn't even know if it's iterating through an array. It just knows that there's an index, and all it does is just graph that value. So always when you're diagramming, just look at what's available, what variables are available in the global memory, local memory, or like inside for loop, and so on. So that's why diagram is super powerful. Yeah, great. We did this. We did it. I wish that was the end of it, but we have another nested for loop. I promise. I think this is the last one. Yeah, this is the last one. So we're almost there, now we know how, you know, torturing a nested for loop can be, but it's fine. This, not algorithm, but like this code has everything that we learned today. We are going to use variables. We're going to have for loops, even nested for loops. We're going to declare variables, and then inside the nested for loop, we have a control flow. So it's going to check if the condition meets. So it's going to be way easier because we just did something very similar. So let's do this. Samina, I don't remember if you had a mic or not. I can move on to Sarah. Or Shannon. No? Okay, Vivian. Let's, can you unmute? Cool. Okay, thank you, Vivian. So when you invoke this code or like run this code, what opens up?
Okay, execution and global memory.
Yep, we open up an execution context. It's gonna be very long, so I'm going to make it pretty. And this is the global memory. Cool. We have a thread of execution here.
Oh, but I don't have enough.
Cool. So what is the first step that it's going to say?
The next thing would be the initialization. Okay, there's the Can you
So
hear
what
me?
are we doing? What are we doing on the first line?
Okay, so the first line is
declaring.
Okay, so we're going to the array.
We're declaring the constant my_nums and then setting it as the array. You're right.
Yeah, so
Now
it
let's
would
talk
be
about
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. Next would be YAML, right? YAML.
Yes.
What's the next step?
The next step is going into our for loop.
Yeah, the health starts.
So we are going to initialize I equals 0.
Yep.
Then we check the condition, which meets the condition. So we're going to go into the next line. So we declare const number 1. And that is going to be assigned my_nums at index 0. So that's a 1. So num1 equals 1.
And
then we go into the next for loop. And initialize j to 0. And we check if it meets the condition, and it does. Going in within that for loop, a const num2 is declared and is assigned num1 at 0, so that's 1. So num2 equals 1. And then that is followed by a condition. If num1 plus num2 is strictly equal to 7.
Great technical communication. Yes.
Thank you. So we have to check, so looking for num1, that's 1, and then num2 equals 1, so that's 2.
So it doesn't meet the condition?
It does not meet the condition. We don't have to worry about the side, and we go back out to the j. We're still in a for loop, but we're now at j equals 1.
Yes, we
After incrementing it, yeah.
Yep, awesome. Thank you. Next will be Yana.
Okay. So now let me start with the first for loop. And
actually, currently we're inside the inner for loop, right?
Yes.
And currently j is 1. So what happens next?
Yeah. So I is number 1. So my nums.
I forgot to put.
Length for my nums is 5. So I is smaller than 5. So plus 1 for I. So that means my nums, my nums index 2, which is 2.
So you mean num2, we're declaring the constant num2, and then we're assigning it to 2, as you said, yes?
Yes. And then j is equal 1 now, and then 1 is smaller than 5 too, so +1 for j. So num2 is my nums index 2, which is 2. So if 2 plus 2 strictly...
Oh, sorry, I see what you were doing. So you don't start from the outer for loop. Outer for loop, so currently what we're doing is we opened up the outer for loop, num1 was 1, and then what we're doing is in the inner for loop. So j, when it was 0, we checked the condition, it met the condition, and then we declare a variable num2 and then assign it to the index 0, which is value 1. So num2 was 1. So then we check the if condition, 1 plus 1 is not equal to 7, so we did not hit that if block. And then we incremented j to 1. So we're still inside this block. So j was 1. It meets the condition. J is, I think you got confused because I did this. Okay, j is less than my nums.length. So when we declare a num2, we use j here, right?
Yes.
So that's why it is 2. And then now still num1 is 1, num2 is 2. Does it meet the if condition?
No.
You're right. So now what do we do? What's the next step if we cannot?
So we can move to the if condition?
Yeah. So you said the if condition did not meet, right? What is the value of num1?
2.
Num1.
Oh, it was 2.
Look at the diagram.
1.
One,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the value of num2?
2.
So what is 1 plus 2? 3, right?
3.
Does that strictly equal to 7?
Oh, that's correct. No, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not going to enter that if statement. Then what is the next step? What do we do after we finished everything inside here? We will have to increment j, right?
Yes.
So what is the current value of j?
2.
What does it say here?
1.
Yeah, and then we increment it to 2. Yes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Anna. Next would be Yolanda.
Yeah. So we've incremented j to 2 now. So we go back into, we're still in that inner for loop. So now we're just trying to do that conditional. So j is less than my nums.length. That is true. So we move into declaring our constant num2, which will now be my nums j, position 2, which is 3. So num2 will be equal to 3. Again, we'll look at our if statement. And so we've got num1, which is still assigned a value of 1, plus num2, which is assigned a value of 3. Add them together and see if they're strictly equal to 7. That is false. So then we go back and increment j to 3.
Yep. Can you actually finish the inner loop?
I can, yeah. So now j is has a value of 3, and we need to see if that's less than my nums.length. That is still true. So we go ahead and declare our constant num2 equal to my nums at index 3. That now has a value of 4, assigned a value of 4. So we go ahead into our if statement, num1, which is still assigned a value of 1, plus num2, which is now assigned a value of 4, is strictly equal to 7. So we've got that's 5, so that again, that is false. So now we go and increment our j now to 4. J is less than my nums.length. That is still true. So we go ahead and declare our constant num2 now will be a value of 5. From there, num1, which is still assigned 1, and plus num2, which is now assigned 5, is strictly equal to 7. Again, that is false. So we go ahead and increment j now to 5. Now we go ahead and see our conditional again. So j is less than my nums.length. That is now false. So we can exit that inner for loop and return back to our original for loop and now increment our I index to 1.
Yay, awesome, thank you. That was a long journey, cool. Next would be Alma.
Yes.
Yes, okay, so let me pull this down a little bit. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I is currently 1. Yeah, and can you go through the next step?
So I incremented 2 now. Or
actually,
to
we
1.
just incremented 1. Yeah.
Right. So yeah. So then we go into the for loop, and num1 equals 2.
Okay.
And then we go into the for loop again, and
Yep, sorry, I was lazy. I did not delete it. I'm just going to do this. And then?
And j equals 0. Then we declare a constant num2, which equals 0. And
num2
then
equals 0?
Yes.
J is 0. What is the 0th index of my nums?
Oh, 1.
1, yes, correct.
Right.
So my num2 is 1.
So then num1 plus num2 is 3. So that's not strictly equal to 7. So then we go back and increment j to 1.
Let's finish the inner loop. You will get to console off something.
And then num2 equals 2 now. So then num1 plus num2 is 4, which does not strictly equal to 7. So then you go increment j again to 2. 2. Yeah, 2. And then num2 equals 3. And then num1 plus num2 is 5, which does not equal to 7. So then you go back and it's increment j to 3, which num2 equals 4. I'm losing track. Yeah. Okay. So then num1 plus num2 is 6, which does not equal to 7. So then you go back
Almost
again.
there.
And so now j is 4. Yeah, j is 4. So num2 is equal to 5. So then num1 plus num2 equals 7.
Yay! So what do we do?
So then now we console log lucky 7.
Yes, finally. After all those rounds. Cool. And then what's the next step?
And then you exit out of that loop. And
before that, why do we exit out?
Because we've met because 5, the j does not equal the length. It's not less than.
Yeah, so you have to
Yeah.
increment first, right?
Yeah, increment.
So
And then
J
J
increments to
equals to
5.
5, which
And
doesn't
now we
mean.
don't meet the condition.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Cool, cool. And then what will be the next step after exiting out this whole thing?
You increment I to 2.
Awesome. Thank you. Whew. At least you got to console log something, right? Next would be Brandy.
Hello.
Cool. Hello. So yeah, currently we incremented to 2. What's the next step?
So we're going to check to see if I is less than the length of my nums. And it is. So my nums 1 will be 3. Wait, is that wrong?
No, that's right. That's right. I was just confused. I was like, yeah, it is.
So then we're going to run the, no, then we're going to go to the inner loop. So J is 0.
Yep.
We're going to check to see if 0 is, well, J is less than my nums, the length of my nums, which is true. So my nums 2 will be 1. And then we're going to see if my nums 1 and my nums 2 is strictly equal to 7, which is not. So then we're going to increment J by 1.
Yep.
So J is 1 and num 2 will be 2. Okay, so then we're going to check to see if J is less than the length of my nums, which is not, if it's less than my nums, the length of my nums, and it is not. So
is it not, or is it?
I mean, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's pretty confusing when you're saying it out loud. Yeah, you can go
on. So then my nums will be. Oh wait. We're gonna check to see if J is less than my nums, the length of my nums, and it is. So then my nums is 2.
Yeah. Oh wait, did we increment J?
Yes, we did.
Okay. I guess then num 2, and then it was 2. Okay, and then you were saying?
Okay, and then we're gonna see if num 1 plus num 2 is strictly equal to 7, which it isn't. So then we're going to increment J again. So J is now 2, and then my num is 3. J is less than my.
You mean num 2 is 3, right?
J is 2, num 2 is 3.
Yeah. You said my num, so yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm getting. I think I'm repeating it so much. I'm getting confused.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
So okay, so my nums, J is less than the length of my nums. So then we're going to see if num 1 plus num 2 is strictly equal to 7, which it isn't. So then we're going to increment J again. So J is going to be 3, and num 2 will be 4.
Yep.
J is still less than the length of my nums. So then we're going to see if num 1 plus num 2 is strictly equal to 7, which it is. So then we're going to console log the string lucky 7.
Yay.
And then we're going to increment J by 1 again. So J is 4, num 2 is going to be 5. And then since J is not less than.
one thing. So you first, J was 4, right? So you only enter the for loop after checking the condition. So J is 4 is less than the length. That's when we declare num 2. Make sense?
Wait, repeat it one more time.
Yeah, sure. So inside this for loop, what you're doing is you have the value J, you increment it. So currently J is 4. And then you check the condition, is 4 less than the length 5. That after that we entered the block, so that is when we assign the value or declare the variable num2. You were saying, yeah, you were kind of mixing that up, but yeah.
Got it. So you don't declare J until you check the condition.
Oh, not J, I meant num2.
I mean num2.
So, yeah.
Okay. So J is still 4
currently
right
4.
now. And num2 is 5.
No, before that, J is 4. You check the condition. Is J less than my nums.length?
No.
J is 4. The length is 5, so it is less than, right? So the condition meets.
But wait, if J is 4. Oh, never mind. Sorry. I was getting confused. So
Yeah, you're good.
4, but the index of 4, that's something different, right?
Yeah, that's different.
Okay, so J is 4. So 4 is not less than the length of my nums. No, 4 is less than.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So then that's
then
when
we
I
declare num2
to 5.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, do I keep going?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I'm getting confused. Okay.
No, you're good.
So now num1 plus num2 is not strictly equal to 7. So then we increment J by 1. So now J is 5.
Does it meet the condition?
J is not less than the length of my nums.
So
we exit out.
The next step?
And then we increment I by 1.
Yep. So now I is 3.
3.
Great job. Awesome. Cool.
Oh, I have one question.
Yes, go ahead.
So with nested loops, you don't need 2 arrays to go through them, right? Is that for some reason when okay.
You don't have to. So you can. So if you want to have 2 arrays, then you will just have a different condition, right? But currently in our code, we only have 1 array, and even the second one is only iterating through the same array.
Got it. Okay.
Cool. Next would be Charlie.
Okay, this is quite the marathon.
I know, right?
Okay. So we've just sorted out the smaller. We've just finished and we've exited the smaller for loop. We've returned to the first, and so we will increment I by 1.
So, yeah, we actually incremented 2.
We incremented to 3.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. There's a lot of back and forth. I was trying to follow what was happening. Okay, so now that I is 3, we're going to check the condition. Is I less than the length of my nums, which it is, and so we'll assign the variable num1 with a value of 0, 1, 2, 4. Sorry.
No, that's what JavaScript does. So you're good.
So the value of 4. So my nums will be updated in global memory with a value of 4. My num1 will be updated in global memory with a value of 4. And so we will open up.
One thing, sorry, it's not in global memory, as you can see.
Oh, it's just a local. It's just for the for loop.
Yeah, memory of the for loop. Yep. Cool.
Right. So then we're going to open up the
inner for loop.
Yeah, the inner for loop, that inner execution context, and beginning with we initialize J as 0. J is less than the length of my nums, and so we will go into assigning the constant num2 to the value of 1 to evaluate if the sum of num1 and num2 is strictly equal to 7, which it is not. And so we will increment j by 1. It is checked against the length of the string at my num, and it is less than, so the value of num2 will be updated to 2. The sum of num1 and num2 evaluates to not being strictly equal to 7, no console logging, and we will increment j to 2, which will render the value of num2 to 3. 3, yeah, so sorry. Num1 and num2 is finally 7, so I'm like, I know. Excited, I just, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we've console logged lucky 7, we will go ahead and increment j again to the value of 3.
Does it meet the condition?
Oh, it met the condition, so we can.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we can close this. So then we garbage collect. All of this gets garbage collected.
Oh no, actually, j is currently 3, right? 3 is less than my num.length, which is 5. So we enter the for loop again.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So then we assign the value of the index of 3 to 4, num2 plus num1 is 8, which is not strictly equal to 7, and so we'll increment again to 4. Num2 is updated with a value of 5.
Yeah, before going to num2, please check the condition first to make sure that we can enter.
Make sure the length is okay. Yes. So we've checked the 4 is less than the length of the array, and we will assign the value of 4 to.
My num's index 4.
Yeah. We're assigning the value of num2 to 5 now. The sum of num1 and num2 does not strictly equal to 7. And so we will increment j once more. We check it against the length of the array, and it returns false. So we will close out this execution context and return to the first for loop to increment I by 1 to 4.
Yay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Next would be Chelsea.
Okay, so
ready for the last one?
I think so. So I is now 4, and I think that's equal to my num's length, correct?
What is the length of my nums? How many elements do you see inside?
Well, 1, it starts at 0, right? The first number is 0.
Oh, so that's the index, right? So when you check the length is like literally how many elements
got it. So it's still less than.
Yeah, because it's 5. Yeah, it is confusing.
So then if I is 4, num1 equals 5.
Yeah.
And then you continue on to your next for loop. J is back at 0. 0 is less than my num's length. Num2 equals 1. And then you're going to go ahead and add 5 plus 1. And that's not equal to 7. So then you're going to go back to J. J equals 1. It's still less than my num's length. Num2 equals 2. And then 2 plus 4 is 6.
Well, what is num1?
Num1, sorry, 5 plus 2 is 7. So it will console log that lucky 7.
Yay. And then?
And then it will continue to run through the J loop. So I think we left off at 1. Now J will be 2. My nums 2 is 3. 3 plus 5 is 8. Then I'll go back to J again. And we're on 3, so J is still less than my num's length. Num2 equals 4. 4 plus 5 is 9, so it doesn't equal. Sorry, what am I on? Am I on 3 now?
Yeah,
J equals 3. So J equals 3. It's still.
Yeah.
Oh no, J equals 4, right?
Yeah. Now you increment it.
J equals 4. Gosh. Is less than my num's length. So my num2 equals 5 now. Num1 plus num2 is 10. And then you go back to J. And it does not, it won't run anymore because we're at 5.
So we exit out.
So we'll exit out and go back to I again.
So what's the value of I?
I believe we're on 5.
So now I have 5. Awesome. And then does it meet the condition of the outer loop?
It does not.
Woo! So we exit out from the outer for loop. That's it. Yeah, we did this. We did this. Yay. So happy. Okay, so now please don't use nested for loop, please. But we did it. We made it. This is awesome. Okay, so, and I'm pretty sure that you guys are now for loop masters. You can diagram literally any single for loop. Cool. Okay, so recap what we learned today. We learned variables, looping, and control flow. Yay. Again, variables, just data that you save, and you can interact with it. We say like we run functionality on it. And we have execution context that we learned. It had global memory, thread of execution, and so on. Yeah, data types, even though I didn't go over it in depth, we saw that we can store any type of data types like string, numbers, array, objects, and so on. Control flow is the else, if, else if, else if, else if, else, whatever you can do. The one that made us console log lucky 7. Only 4 times after all this looping. Anyways, yeah, and then looping is literally just going over. I mean, I don't think I even have to explain this because we did this so many times. Yeah, and then we got everything together. Yay, we did it, we made it. This is awesome. Yeah, so we actually have a pairing session, pairing up. This is not mandatory, but I highly recommend doing this because, I mean, you can practice your technical communication, and we value pair programming a lot. So if you are willing to do a pair programming session, you can stay on this Zoom chat. If not, you are free to leave. But before you leave, I wanted to share this fast track. So, and I actually got a question on the chat. So time to tell us, how could we end the inner loop and tell it to go back to the outer loop? Met. So I see what your question is. So instead of, so if I got your question right, Gina, it will be like in this case where it was, yeah, here. So when num1 was 5 and num2 is 2, we console logged lucky 7, right? And then if we don't want to go through these useless like 3, 4, and 5, what can we do? What we can do is inside this if statement here, inside this if statement, we know that when it hits one, like num1 plus num2 is 7, that's the only time we're going to console log. So after this, what we can do is reassign J to 5, let's say, or like reassign it to my nums dot length. Let's say we did that, or something like that. Then after we console log lucky 7, then it's going to change this to not incrementing 1, but we are going to literally just reassign it to the length, which is 5. And then, yes, it's going to increment j to 6. So, I mean, we can say like my_nums.length -1, which is 4. Then it will increment it to 5. Then when we check the condition, it's not going to meet, so we can literally exit out. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, but what if it was on one of the earlier conditions, like when I was 5 and J was 2? You would just automatically tell it if num1 plus num2 is strictly equal to 7, then would you just put like an else? Or I guess I'm trying to see how you could end it right after the if statement is met. Would you do it with an else statement? Or
I will say you can't really do, like, I don't think that would meet the purpose of this nested for loop, because that way we won't be getting all the possible solutions. Does that make sense? So what you can also do is, like, here you can reassign I as well. You can say it like, hey, let's change I to 5. Then it is going to exit out from both for loops, right? But that's not, if that's the case, we will only get the first one or something like that. We won't be even getting it to the 5. So if you want to find like the cool, like the fastest, or like even just a check saying if there is a sum that goes to 7, the solution would make sense. But if you want all the possible combination, yeah, this will be necessary. Cool. Great question, Gina.